Hey guys, tonight we journey into a world you think you know, but trust me, you don't, because we're heading behind the high stone walls and velvet curtains, beyond the fairy tales and sparkling tiaras, into a reality far colder, stranger, and much more exhausting than any bedtime story ever dared to mention. Tonight, we're not talking about dragons or curses or gallant knights sweeping in on white horses. No, we're talking about the daily life of medieval princesses. And spoiler alert, it wasn't all gowns and glitter. But first, if you enjoy sinking into these long, sleepy historical explorations, go ahead and tap that like button. Subscribe for more nighttime journeys, and let me know in the comments what time it is where you're watching from. I love seeing this little global sleep club grow. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft hum, and let's slip together into tonight's story, tonight's journey. What medieval princesses were forced to do daily. Forget everything you think you know about being a princess. This isn't Disney. This is a world where being born into nobility was not a guarantee of happiness, or even of safety. In fact, for medieval princesses, being born with a title often meant being born into a life of surveillance, diplomacy, pressure, and profound discomfort wrapped in silk. Yes, but still deeply unpleasant silk. You see, princesses weren't the stars of the kingdom. They were bargaining chips. Living, breathing contracts, carefully raised and trained to be deployed into dynastic marriage at the right political moment. Their education, their mannerisms, even their posture, every detail was meticulously curated for one purpose: strategic usefulness. And while it might sound glamorous from afar, castles, tutors, jewels, feasts, the truth was far more suffocating. From the moment they could walk, princesses were surrounded by expectation and restriction. They were symbols of their father's legacy and their mother's fertility, and one wrong move could end not just in personal shame, but in diplomatic crisis. They were rarely alone. Servants dressed them, priests instructed them, nurses observed them, chaperones followed them. And the crown? It wasn't made of gold, it was made of rules. So tonight, let's take a walk through a single day in the life of a medieval princess. A day filled with tightly laced gowns, cold wash basins, stiff ceremonial meals, and the constant awareness that at any moment a messenger could arrive to inform her of her future husband, a man she's never met, from a kingdom she'll never leave again. We'll start in the early morning. A room not quite warm, a bed not quite soft, and a body not quite rested. By the time you've finished this journey, you might find yourself feeling a little more grateful for your toothbrush, your thermostat, and your ability to pick your own pajamas. So, if you're ready to let go of the modern world and settle into something a bit more rigid, cold, and embroidered, let's begin. But remember, this is not a fairy tale. This is what really happened. Every day, to her, to you, to every girl born under the wrong star in the right palace. Welcome to the world of medieval princesses. You open your eyes, and it's cold. Not the kind of cold that makes you reach for a blanket. The kind of cold that bites. The kind that's settled into the stones beneath you. The kind that's older than memory and absolutely uninterested in your comfort. The ceiling above you is high, vaulted, and dim. There's a narrow slit of a window on the far side of the chamber, letting in a beam of wintry grey light that is somehow colder than the shadows. There's no glass, just a thin slice of translucent horn, warped and yellowed with age. It distorts everything, including time itself. You're in a castle, but not the candlelit, enchanted kind. No tapestries of unicorns here. The walls are rough stone, damp to the touch, always slightly weeping with moisture. There's a fire burning in the hearth, but it doesn't reach you. The heat stops somewhere around the toes of your lady in waiting, who has been up for hours already, stoking it, boiling water, and waiting to inform you that your schedule today is once again entirely not your own. Your bed is enormous, but only in width. It's a tall wooden structure, more of a frame than a nest, complete with a canopy and heavy curtains on all sides, which trap heat and also the smell. You've been sweating into these sheets for months. They don't get changed often. Linens are washed seasonally, not daily. That smell of sour wool, body oils, old lavender sachets, and faint mildew, that's the smell of royalty. And your mattress? It's not stuffed with feathers. No, it's hay. Old hay. Lumpy, uneven, and held in place by a thin linen ticking that's been patched so many times it looks like a sad quilt of regret. You itch. Always. You sleep fully dressed, or nearly so. A night shift of coarse linen clings to your skin, and beneath it, a few layers of undergarments meant to maintain modesty should anyone need to enter the room unexpectedly, which they will. Because you're not alone. You're never alone. Your ladies sleep in the adjoining chamber, separated by only a thin carved screen. One of them sleeps sitting up in the corner of your room. Another may be curled in a corner, hidden beneath a cloak. Servants drift in and out as quietly as they can, but even their silence has weight. You're watched, always. Not because you're interesting, but because you're important. You are the daughter of a king, a future bride, a future mother to heirs who do not yet exist. Your womb is the property of your family, your nation, and the church. So you stretch, or try to, but your limbs ache, not from activity, but from lack of it. You are not encouraged to run, or dance, or tumble. That's for peasant girls. For you, it's embroidery, stillness, and posture. Your spine is sore from sitting straight. Your hips ache from stillness. Your hair has been braided tightly into place every night to preserve its neatness so tightly that your scalp pulses when you shift. The fire cracks softly. A bird screeches in the courtyard below, and then like clockwork comes the knock. Soft, measured, ritualistic. Your lady-in-waiting enters with a small curtsy. She carries a bronze basin with water. It's been warmed by the fire, but just barely. It will feel like snowmelt on your skin. The bed curtains are drawn back. She waits. You rise slowly. The rushes beneath your bare feet sharp and uneven. Your body adjusts to the chill like it always does with resignation. The washing begins. Hands that are not your own wet a cloth and begin to dab at your arms, your face, your neck. The water is scented faintly with rosemary and vinegar, but not enough to cover everything else. There is no privacy. You are not allowed to bathe yourself. This isn't a question of luxury. It's a question of status. Your body belongs to a hierarchy now. And that hierarchy says, the princess must be cared for. The princess must be protected. The princess must be managed. You sit. A carved stool. One leg shorter than the rest. A comb is pulled through your hair. Slowly, carefully, bits of straw come out with it. One louse, maybe two. Your ladies say nothing, but they exchange glances. They'll dust your scalp with powdered herbs, later lavender and camphor, maybe dried rosemary, not to kill the lice, just to confuse them. They'll be back. You are redressed, layer by layer. First the chemise, softest of your garments, still stiff and itchy, then the undergown, then the laces. Your arms are tugged behind your back. You must stand perfectly still. Corset stays are pulled tight, not the Victorian kind. No whalebone here, but stiff linen panels meant to mold your body into an idealized shape you've never personally seen. Then your outer dress. Embroidered, heavy, beautiful, impractical. Then the belt, the rosary, the veil, the pin. And still, you are not ready. Now comes the jewelry. Nothing too ostentatious, it's morning, after all, but enough to signal who you are, whose daughter you are, and what your expected market value might be. And now, at last, you are allowed to speak, but not freely. Your first words must be a prayer, spoken facing east, before the little wooden crucifix by your bedside. You recite the words. You do not rush them. Your ladies bow their heads. One mouths the words with you. When you finish, a second servant arrives. She carries your breakfast, or what passes for it, but that's for later. Right now, you're standing by the narrow window. You look out. The courtyard below is bustling. Guards change shifts. Horses snort in the stables. A merchant is shouting at the steward's boy. Somewhere, a kitchen maid drops a pan and is scolded so loudly you hear it echo up the stairs. You lean on the stone sill and inhale. The air smells of wood smoke, frost, and manure, but also, faintly, freedom, distant, unreachable, like a song you heard once in childhood and never again. You are the daughter of the king. You are a medieval princess, and you have just woken up. You're dressed now, properly, every layer in place, every strand of hair pinned and hidden, every part of your body accounted for except your appetite, which has wandered off somewhere, probably to die behind the hearth. Breakfast is here, but don't get excited. This isn't a steaming spread of eggs, toast, coffee, and comforting aromas. There is no clink of fine china, no warm sunlight through a kitchen window. There is a wooden tray, a bowl, a cup. Everything's slightly damp, everything's slightly off. The bowl contains a grey, glutinous substance. This is pottage, technically edible. It's a thin porridge made from oats or barley, boiled with water. And if the kitchens had any, maybe a bit of milk skimmed from yesterday's goat. Occasionally there's a pinch of salt. If the kitchen servant really liked you or really feared your mother, there might be a few berries on top. But don't count on it. You eat slowly because the texture is somewhere between wet cloth and something that once resembled food. It's lukewarm. It always islands. The fire is too far away, and food is carried up 3 flights of stairs on wooden trays that were made during your grandmother's time. By the time it reaches you, it has no dreams left. And then there's the bread. You pick it up. Hard crust. Dense middle. It's not soft, not even close. This isn't bread as you know it. This is medieval noble bread, made from fine ground wheat flour, which sounds luxurious until you realize that it was often mixed with powdered chalk to make it stretch further. It's dry. You take a bite, and you feel it scrape down your throat, like it resents being chewed. To drink, a cup of watered-down ale. Yes, ale. For breakfast. Because the water isn't safe. The castle well was dug decades ago and never cleaned. Pipes don't exist. Filters are a fantasy. Every cup of water is a gamble, and in this world, the stakes are dysentery. The ale is weak, barely alcoholic, but it's fermented just enough to kill the worst of the bacteria. It tastes slightly sour, a bit musty, and has a foam that clings to the side of the cup, like it's afraid to let go. Even children drink this, even you, because there is no tea, no coffee, no juice. You drink to survive, not to enjoy. And as you take your final sip, a small fly floats lazily at the surface. You ignore it. Everyone does. Your lady wipes your mouth with a cloth. Not because you need help, but because that's what's expected. Everything must be orderly, controlled, precise. And now it's time to clean yourself. Again, breakfast may be over, but the real hygiene routine is only just beginning. Because while you've already been wiped, dusted, and dabbed, a princess is not permitted to smell like, well, anything at all. Cleanliness isn't just about health, it's about symbolism. If your skin is fragrant and pale, it means you're refined, untouched by labor, distant from the peasantry. A body unspoiled by work is a body worthy of alliance. You are led behind a curtain. This is the closest thing you'll have to privacy all day. A copper basin sits on a low table, filled with more warm water, steaming faintly in the drafty air. Soap, if you can call it that, is in a small wooden bowl made from animal fat and ash. It smells sharp, acrid, and slightly like boiled mutton. You dip your hands into the water and wince. The copper is already turning green around the edges. Your fingernails are cleaned with a thin sliver of carved bone. Your feet are dabbed gently, your legs patted dry. Your underarms are dusted with a mixture of powdered herbs and crushed flower petals, rose if it's available, lavender if not. A vinegar-soaked cloth is wiped across your neck and wrists, then dried with a piece of soft linen. This, they say, will prevent illness. This, they believe, will protect your soul. There is no brushing of teeth. Toothpaste hasn't been invented. Instead, a twig is handed to you. It's been frayed at the end. You chew on it, gently. Then you rub it against your molars and gums. Careful not to gag, careful not to cry. The taste is bitter, probably from the birch oil someone dripped on it for freshness. Your breath now smells like bark and stomach. Your lady nods approvingly. Clean enough. You are not allowed to wash your own hair. That task is done once a week, sometimes once a month, and always with ceremonial attention. It takes hours. First, it must be unbraided painful, then combed painful, then washed with a mixture of eggs, lye soap, and rainwater, more pain. But that's not today. Today, your hair is simply refreshed with dry powder white flour, beaten into the scalp to absorb oil. It leaves a faint cloud when you move. You look like a ghost, but that's the goal. Color is fashionable. Color is peasant. Your eyebrows are plucked to a perfect curve. Not by your own hand, of course. That would be vain. One of your attendants uses a fishbone tweezer and murmurs a prayer while she works. Another brushes your face with chalky powder to make you appear more ethereal. A tiny drop of crushed beetroot is dabbed onto your lips, then wiped away, leaving only a hint, enough to suggest that you are alive, but not too alive. Makeup is vanity, and vanity is a sin. You don't look in the mirror. There isn't one. Not really. Just a polished piece of metal, warped like your reflection. You see a girl in fabric that she didn't choose, smelling like herbs she didn't pick, walking a path she didn't shape, and it's only 9 a.m. The maids change your linen underclothes. You raise your arms like a doll. They lift, fold, replace. You say nothing. They say nothing. Everyone here is trained to behave as though this is normal, as though it is a blessing to be waited on, as though it is a privilege to never touch your own skin. You are now deemed presentable. You are now ready to go downstairs, to walk the long stone hall lined with faded tapestries, to sit straight-backed on a too-tall chair and sip spiced wine while listening to men in robes debate things you don't understand. You are ready, not clean, not comfortable, but approved, and that is the only thing that matters. In this world, being a princess is not about feeling like royalty. It is about never appearing wrong. And if you're wondering how long it takes before this becomes normal, the answer is, it never really does. You just learn how to stop resisting it, because here, resistance is unladylike, and unladylike behavior gets written into chronicles as scandal, not history. Now that you're washed, powdered, padded, and faintly vinegared, it's time to discuss the one thing most people imagine when they hear the word princess the clothes. Yes, you're about to get dressed. Again, not in the soft silk-lined fantasy gown of bedtime stories, not the sparkling blue number from a cartoon, but in the real thing medieval noble attire. which is less about grace and more about armor made of fabric. It begins with the undergarments. And no, you don't get to skip these. First, a linen shift, thin, scratchy, often patched. It's the only thing that touches your bare skin, and you'll be wearing it day and night. It's meant to absorb sweat, though no one uses the word sweat. Perspiration is what peasants do. Princesses merely glisten, even when they're melting. Over the shift comes the kirtle, a long-sleeved undergown that's fitted tightly to the body. If you're unlucky today, and you usually are, it's made of rough wool that bites like a nettle. You've got to be laced into it. And the process involves holding your breath, lifting your arms, and standing still while a servant tugs the laces tighter and tighter until your ribs feel like they've signed a peace treaty with each other and lost. Then, over that, comes the overgown. This one is decorative, yes. It's embroidered, coloured, possibly even trimmed with fur if the season allows and your family has something to prove. But it's also heavy, so heavy. The sleeves are long enough to graze the floor, the hemline is constantly being stepped on, and the neckline is either scandalously low because French fashion is invading again, or stiffly high and itchy because your grandmother insists on piety. Then come the accessories, and oh, how they pile on. A girdle, basically a jeweled belt, dangles low over your hips. Decorative? Yes. Functional? Absolutely not. It drags slightly when you walk, occasionally catches on furniture, and makes sitting a balancing act. Your shoes, if they can be called, that are thin-soled, flat, and always either too tight or too loose. They slip on polished floors and collect mud with an enthusiasm that borders on joyful. You do not run in them, you glide. Or rather, you try to glide while internally calculating how many more hours you must pretend your arches don't hurt. And of course, the headdress. Today, it's a linen veil pinned to a coif that's wrapped around your braided hair, like a protective cocoon. If you're married, it must cover everything. Modesty is paramount. If you're unmarried, you may show a little more hair, but not too much. A princess who reveals too much scalp is asking for rumors, and rumors are a kind of death. You can't move your head too quickly. The pins are sharp, they dig, and heaven help you, if one of them slips, you'll have a silent servant pulling it out of your neck like it's a splinter of your reputation. The entire outfit weighs around 15 pounds, sometimes more. You can feel it pulling at your shoulders, your waist, your spine. But to complain would be deeply unbecoming. And so you smile, or you try. You are now fully dressed. Your arms are wrapped in sleeves, your legs swaddled in thick wool, your body compressed and ornamented. You are, quite literally, a display piece, a tapestry with a pulse. And now you leave your room. Let's talk about that room, shall we? Because while the word castle may conjure images of grandeur, what you're actually living in is a glorified stone refrigerator, cold in winter, damp in summer, drafty year-round. The walls are made of thick, uneven stone. They're covered in tapestries, not for beauty, but for insulation. The tapestries smell like damp cloth, old smoke, and dust stirred up by the march of insects. Your floors are stone as well. Hard, cold, always. There are no rugs, just rushes, dried plants strewn across the floor, and occasionally changed when they begin to rot. Sometimes herbs like lavender or mint are mixed in, but more often than not it just smells like old hay and whatever spilled last week that nobody properly cleaned up. You do not have your own fireplace. That belongs to the Great Hall. Instead, you rely on a brazier or a single, reluctant fire in the corner of your room, which smokes more than it warms. The windows are narrow slits, not to keep the light out, but to keep enemies' arrows from getting in. There is no glass, only parchment or thin slices of horn oiled to let in a pale version of daylight. There is no privacy. Not really. The concept doesn't exist. Your room has no door that locks. Servants come and go at will. Your sisters sleep nearby. Attendants shuffle in to light candles, fetch cloaks, announce guests. You are never truly alone, and at night, it gets worse. There are rats. Always. They scuttle in the walls, scratch in the rushes, chew on the edges of your linens. You once woke up to find one nibbling the crust of bread you'd hidden under your pillow. That was the last time you saved anything for later. Spiders cling to the ceiling beams. You've learned not to look up too long, or you'll start imagining them falling. You tell yourself they keep the flies away, but the truth is, nothing really keeps the flies away. In the spring, moths will chew holes in your best gowns. In summer, fleas infest everything. And in winter, it gets so cold that the ink freezes in its well before you can write your morning prayers. The toilet? A wooden seat over a hole tucked in a small chamber with a bucket of ashes for covering your shame. If you're lucky, it's emptied daily. If not, well, you try not to breathe. Bathing doesn't happen in your room. When it does happen, which is rare, it's in a wooden tub dragged in by servants, filled with kettle after kettle of boiled water from the kitchens. By the time it's full, it's already cold again, and you'll bathe in it anyway, surrounded by others, being scrubbed, being observed. So no, your castle is not a palace. It's not Zoze. It's not yours. It's a drafty, echoing monument to your family's political ambitions. It smells like damp wool, smoke, lye soap, and duty. It creaks at night and moans when the wind hits it just right. But you never complain, because you are a princess, and princesses must appear comfortable even when they are very much not. And besides, the day has only just begun. Your gown rustles as you walk, not in a pleasant storybook kind of way. It drags, catching on your shoes, picking up straw, and occasionally threatening to trip you down the stairs. Because yes, there are stairs. So many stairs. Castle corridors are not elegant. They are cold, dark, and designed more for defense than comfort. You move through them like a well-dressed ghost, trailing fabric and obligations. It's morning, but you've been awake for hours. And now it's time to get to work. No, not work in the way a farmer toils or a servant scrubs. Your labor isn't about lifting or hauling. It's about performance, precision, control. The daily labor of a medieval princess is political, social, and exhausting in its own way. It's the work of being watched, being correct, and being valuable without ever seeming to try. Your first task, morning prayers. The chapel is cold, always cold, even in summer. The stone floor seeps through your shoes and into your bones. You kneel on a cushion so thin it might as well not be there. A priest murmurs Latin in a drone that sounds older than the walls. You bow your head. You fold your hands. You pray not for joy, not for peace, but for duty, because to be seen praying is to be seen properly. Piety is your armor. Next comes instruction. A tutor arrives, usually a man with ink-stained fingers and a constant air of disapproval. He teaches you to read, not for pleasure, not novels or poetry, scripture, saints' lives, psalms. If you're lucky, some Latin. If you're unlucky, just enough to impress a future husband. You must sit still. Your posture must be perfect. You may not sigh. You may not fidget. You listen. And when you are asked to recite, you must do so clearly, calmly, and without pride. Pride is unbecoming. And if you speak too well, they might remind you that women should be humble. If you speak too softly, you'll be told to enunciate. If you speak with confidence, you risk being called clever, and clever is dangerous. After instruction, there's needlework. Embroidery is not just a hobby. It's a social language, a canvas for political imagery. You are expected to stitch birds, vines, coats of arms, saints, and roses, all in tiny, perfect stitches that make your fingers bleed and your eyes burn. This is your quiet labor, the kind that doesn't break the body, but wears down the soul. You are joined by your sisters, your cousins, other noble girls brought in for fostering. No one speaks above a whisper. The only sounds are the click of needles, the whisper of thread through linen, and the occasional soft correction from a chaperone. You see until your fingers go numb. Then you keep going. Eventually you are called away to visit the steward, not because you run the estate, but because one day you'll be expected to. You are shown accounts, not numbers in rows, but parchments covered in faded ink and the names of tenants who owe rent. You are told how much grain was harvested, how many sheep survived the winter. You listen politely while the steward talks about crop rotation and tithes and why the blacksmith's son can no longer walk properly. This is not your burden yet, but it will be, because when you are married off, when you are sent to some far-off land to be someone's bride, you will be expected to manage a household, perhaps even a castle of your own. You must know how to oversee servants, discipline kitchen girls, order spices, arrange dowries, host visiting nobles, and calculate the cost of wool by the bolt. So you nod and pretend that your mind isn't drifting, because distraction is a luxury, and luxuries are for someone else. By midday, your body is stiff and aching again. You walk carefully because your shoes have no support, your gown is too tight, and the stone floors are always uneven. You pass through the great hall where your father is holding court. You are not allowed to speak unless spoken to. You stand to the side, back straight, chin level. You are a decoration, a chess piece, a symbol of family unity and fertility. One day, you will sit beside another man while he holds court. You will smile while he sentences peasants, taxes merchants, and listens to advisors argue over war. But for now, you are silent, and you are learning. Occasionally, you are summoned to greet a guest, to offer a gift basket to a visiting bishop, to recite a bit of poetry, to be presentable. That's the labor of a medieval princess, to exist in the right way, in the right place, at the right time, with the right expression. And when you are not in public, you are practicing for it. Your lady-in-waiting reminds you how to curtsy, how to respond if a nobleman addresses you, how to keep your voice soft but firm, how to make eye contact but not too much, how to appear modest even when your gown has a neckline down to your collarbone. You are not allowed to run. That would be childish. You are not allowed to laugh too loudly. That would be unrefined. You are not allowed to cry, ever. If you do, it must be done alone, into a pillow, without witnesses, and preferably with enough time to recover before your next audience. Later, you are brought to the solar, the warmest room in the castle. If the sun agrees to show up, here you continue your embroidery, or read from a holy book, or practice music on an instrument that hasn't been tuned since your mother was a girl. Your fingers are raw, your back is aching, your stomach growls, but it's not time to eat. Your younger brother runs through the corridor laughing, dragging a wooden sword. He's allowed. You are not, because you are not a child. You are not a girl. You are not even fully a person. You are a princess, which means you are preparation, a collection of rituals, a body made into a future. You are trained to carry yourself like a relic, precious, polished, and untouchable. And all of this isn't your wedding day. This isn't your coronation. This is just Tuesday. The labor of a princess is not marked by calluses or bruises. It doesn't leave ash on your apron or blisters on your hands. It's quieter than that, more suffocating. It is a daily performance for an audience of chaperones, clergy, tutors, servants, and suitors not yet arrived. It is a lifelong audition, and you never stop rehearsing. You kneel so often, you stop noticing the pain. It's simply part of life, part of the rhythm, like waking, dressing, being watched, and pretending not to feel it. Prayer, belief, and religious observance aren't things you choose. They are the very structure of your existence. From the moment you were born, before you could even speak, a priest dipped your head in cold water and declared your soul claimed. You were baptized into faith, into obedience, into a version of life where every joy was a temptation and every misstep a potential damnation. You don't get to wonder if God is watching. You already know that He island, and so is everyone else. As a princess, you are the physical embodiment of divine order, or at least that's what people need to believe. Your father rules by the grace of God. Your body, your words, your purity, all of them must reflect the moral superiority of your bloodline. You are, whether you like it or not, a walking sermon. And sermons don't ask questions. Each day is peppered with ritual, prayers upon waking, blessings before meals, confession before communion. You cross yourself when thunder rumbles, when someone sneezes, when a shadow falls too suddenly across your path. Because in this world, everything has meaning, and much of it is terrifying. The priests speak of angels and saints, but they also speak of hellfire, of devils that whisper into the ears of idle women, of eternal torment waiting for the vain, the lustful, the curious. You learn young that curiosity is dangerous. Too much interest in the world leads to questions, and questions lead to sin. So instead, you memorize, you recite, you absorb the rules like embroidery patterns, beautiful in their repetition, but not always understood. There are so many things you must never do. You must not look in a mirror too long. That invites pride. You must not sleep through morning mass. That invites spiritual decay. You must not dream too vividly, laugh too loudly, or speak too boldly. Those invite demons. And if something bad happens, if you fall ill, or trip on the stairs, or find lice in your hair, it's not just bad luck. It's a sign, a punishment, a divine rebuke, because God sees everything, but so do His earthly agent. Your confessor visits weekly, sometimes more. He sits quietly in a carved wooden chair while you kneel before him, listing your imagined sins. I thought an unkind thing. I envied my cousin's dress. I wished for too much butter on my bread. His questions are detailed, sometimes invasive, but you answer. You must. Confession is cleansing, they say, like soap for the soul. Sometimes you are sent to do penance, silent prayer, a skipped meal, a cold bath, writing lines from scripture until your hand cramps. Other times, you are forgiven with a quiet nod and a whispered Latin blessing. You rise, kiss the priest's ring, and step back into the castle corridor, wondering if you're truly clean now, or just quieta. And then there are the superstitions, the parts of belief no priest teaches, but every servant knows. Your nursemaid once told you never to comb your hair at night, it attracts ghosts. She placed iron scissors beneath your pillow to ward off witches. She burned dried sage in the corner of your room when you were sick, whispering words that sounded older than the church itself. You're not supposed to believe these things, but you do, because the world around you is unpredictable. And when illness takes people in their sleep, when crops fail, when children are born with feverish eyes or crooked limbs, people need reason. And when God is too silent, superstition speaks. You cross yourself when you pass the chapel. You tie knots in thread when someone travels far. You knock on wood, even though no one taught you why. And sometimes, late at night, when the wind howls through the castle stones like a dying beast, You press your hands over your ears and pray not for salvation, but for silence. Because the worst fears aren't always in scripture. Some are whispered in corners. Women with too much knowledge, they are dangerous. Herbalists, midwives, widows who talk too much, girls who read too eagerly. These women are watched, suspected, sometimes accused. Witchcraft, they call it. You've seen one once. She was dragged into the courtyard, her face dirty, her eyes wild. The priest said she cursed a child. The crowd didn't question it. They watched. You watched. You were told to look away. But you didn't. You couldn't. That memory still lives somewhere behind your ribs, not because of what happened to her, but because of how easy it was for everyone to believe it. Even the castle itself holds relics of fear. The bones of a saint are kept in the chapel. Your mother wears a scrap of cloth said to have touched the robe of the Virgin Mary. A blood-stained cross is hidden behind the altar, carried back from the Crusades, they say, blessed by a dying monk. These objects are holy, but also powerful, dangerous. They must be treated with reverence. They are wrapped, kissed, hidden, touched only by gloved hands. You wonder sometimes what would happen if someone misplaced one, or if they weren't holy at all. But you never say this aloud, because that would be heresy. And heresy doesn't just damn you, it damns your entire family. So you believe, or at least you behave as though you do, because belief is currency, and you are a princess. Your faith must be visible, like your cleanliness, like your posture, like your silence. You must appear devout, whether or not you feel it. Even your marriage, which looms ahead like a castle you don't want to enter, will be arranged with the church's blessing. It must be. A union without divine approval is no union at all, and a princess married without ceremony might as well be a commoner, or worse, a scandal. The bishop will preside, the priest will bless, the relic will be touched, the oath will be sworn before heaven, and your future will be sealed not just by law, but by God himself. You will become a wife, a vessel for heirs, a holy woman, in theory, but even then, you will remain watched, judged, confessed, because there is no end to piety. Not for a girl born into silk, not for a daughter of a king, not for someone whose entire life is a prayer whispered on someone else's behalf. The bells ring for the midday meal, not lunch. That word doesn't exist here. This is dinner, the largest meal of the day, and it is both an event and an ordeal. You make your way to the great hall, a cavernous, echoing space filled with smoke, shadows, and the persistent smell of overcooked meat. The ceiling beams are black with soot. The rushes on the floor are new, thankfully, but they already crackle underfoot like dried leaves. You are dressed, powdered, and positioned. You do not enter casually. You are announced. A steward calls your name not in affection, but in full title, followed by a list of your relations and, if anyone's feeling particularly formal, the name of the realm where you're expected to be married someday. Everyone already knows who you are, but still the performance must be maintained. You walk slowly to your assigned seat. It's not at the center. That's reserved for your father or your eldest brother if he's playing at being regent today. Your place is several chairs down, but still prominent enough to be seen. Everything is about being seen. The table is long, made of heavy oak, carved with symbols of lions, crosses, vines, and war. On it are dishes, many of which you don't recognize, even though they appear almost every day. The food of a royal household is complicated more about symbolism than satisfaction. Let's begin with the bread, always present, sometimes edibly. There's the coarse brown loaf meant for the servants and the white manchet bread, which you are given. It's finer, but it's still dense, dry, and strangely chewy, like something trying very hard not to be a stone. Then there's the meat. Not simple cuts, but entire birds, roasted and reassembled to look whole. Pigeons stuffed with herbs. Peacocks dyed blue and served with their feathers reattached. Swans that look like sculptures and taste like disappointment. You're offered a slice by your attendant. You accept it with a nod. You chew it with grace, and you do not ask what it island, because in the medieval kitchen, meat is often whatever the kitchen claims it island. Venison could also be dog, if stocks are low and the stew needs thickening. You drink wine, but it's weak, watered down, flavored with spices that feel like a hot dagger in your throat. Cinnamon, cloves, ginger, all boiled and strained, not for pleasure, for preservation, for status. Ale is for peasant. Wine, even terrible wine, is noble. There are other dishes. Boiled turnips in almond milk. Cold fish molded into the shape of other fish. Eels stewed in saffron. Things pickled so aggressively they crunch with vinegar. You pick at them because to eat too little is rude, and to eat too much, unforgivable. You must be full, but not greedy. Satisfied, but not passionate. Clean, but not fussy. You dab your lips with a cloth after each bite, not because they're dirty, but because it's expected. You chew with your mouth closed. You do not speak unless spoken to, and if you must speak, your voice must not carry over the table. Meanwhile, across the hall, your younger brother is stuffing pigeon into his mouth with both hands. No one stops him. He's a boy. Boys are expected to be messy. You are a girl. Girls are expected to be perfect. After the food is cleared, sometimes thrown to the dogs, sometimes scraped into buckets for the pigs, comes the entertainment. Strela Rives. He plays a lute with fingers that look like they've never held anything heavier than a string. He sings of love, loyalty, betrayal, and death, always death, because nothing captures noble attention like well-structured tragedy. A jester follows. His jokes are old, his voice strained. No one really laughs, but everyone smiles. You've heard these performances a dozen times, but you still applaud, because everything is ritual, even the clapping. Later, a bard recites a poem. It's in French, which you barely understand, but you nod along anyway. Your tutor reminds you that knowing French is essential for court life. You pretend you're fluent. You are not. The room is warm now, full of noise and wine breath and overcooked meat steam. It's not pleasant, but it's lively. And in this world, liveliness is a rarity. You're led to the solar for the afternoon. This is the gentler part of the day. A place for conversation, light games, and more embroidery. Someone brings out a board game, maybe backgammon or something, with carved bone dice, and you play with the other girls, silently pretending not to care who wins. Winning, after all, is unladylike. Winning implies ambition, and ambition is best left to men. If you play too well, someone will suggest you go easy. If you lose too quickly, someone will ask if your mind is wandering. Either way, you're being assessed. Everything is a test. You sometimes sing during this hour. Quiet songs, religious hymns or ballads about maidens waiting for knights who never return. You are told this is romantic. You do not think it island. Sometimes a traveling troupe arrives. Jugglers, fire eaters, actors performing morality plays. The themes are always the same: temptation, punishment, sin, redemption. You upload politely, but the fire eater gets your attention because for a moment, just one flickering, dangerous moment, he looks like he enjoys himself. And that's rare here. Enjoyment, for a princess, is suspicious. Everything you do is to maintain status, grace, and utility. Even your leisure must look productive. You embroider not for fun, but because it will be hung in a hall as proof of your patience. You sing not for joy, but to show you've been properly educated. You play games not to compete, but to appear sociable. And When you laugh, it must be quiet, contained, acceptable. Later in the evening, you are summoned for another small meal. Supper, bread, cheese, perhaps a little fruit, dried figs, if they've survived the mice. You eat in a smaller room this time. The mood is lighter, the scrutiny less intense, but your posture is still perfect, your words still filtered, your smile still measured. There is no off switch, no relaxation, just smaller degrees of performance. And once the sun begins to set, and the candles flicker in their holders, and the servants begin to collect the platters and tuck away the wine, you exhale. Not in relief, but in preparation. Because the day isn't over, the night is coming, and with it, new expectations. There's a certain silence that falls over the castle in the evening. Not peace, not calm, a watchful, brittle sort of silence. As if the stones themselves are listening, as if something has just passed through the halls, something cold, invisible, and ancient. That something is illness, because in the medieval world, sickness doesn't knock. It seeps, it slips, it spreads. And for a princess like you, it is always close. You've grown up with the sound of coughs echoing through stone, wet, rattling, unspeakably human coughs that belong to servants, tutors, even sisters. You've seen people carried from rooms and never returned. You've seen a chamber sealed in holy symbols after someone died there, as if words could erase what death had already claimed. And in this world, death has many forms. There's fever, which begins with a chill and ends with convulsions. There's flux, a delicate name for a disease that empties the body from both ends until nothing remains but moaning. There's the bloody cough, the terrifying illness that leaves pink on handkerchiefs and whispers the promise of slow, inevitable decay. And then there's the thing no one names, the plague. It hasn't reached your castle yet. Not this year, not yet. But you've heard the stories. Black swellings in the armpits and groin, purple splotches on the skin, a fever so high it melts the mind, death in 2 days, 3, if you're lucky. Your mother keeps a relic in her chamber, a fragment of a saint's bone. She kisses it nightly and prays it will keep the sickness away. You do the same. You don't know if it works, but you're afraid to stop. Medicine, as it exists in your world, is a strange combination of ritual, superstition, and desperation. There are physicians, but they rarely come to the castle unless summoned. Most are trained in ancient texts, Galen, Hippocrates, and Avicenna, all men who lived in warmer lands hundreds of years before you were born. Their books are copied by candlelight, filled with diagrams of humors and balances, bleeding charts and planetary alignments. Because yes, the stars are consulted when you fall ill. If Venus is in a bad position, you are not to be treated yet. If the moon is full, you must not be bled. And yes, you will be bled. If your head aches, your skin burns, your belly swells, they will cut a vein. Your nurse holds the bowl. The blood drips slowly, dark, and frightening. They say it will draw out the imbalance. You do not feel better, but you are told to believe that you should. For smaller ailments, you're given herbs. Chamomile for calming, yarrow for fever, pennyroyal for your female humours, though no one explains what that really means. If you can't sleep, they burn herbs beside your bed. Sometimes the smoke soothes you, sometimes it just makes you cough harder. You've also seen leeches, small, squirming, and inexplicably important. They are placed on your wrists, your ankles, your temples. You are told not to move, not to scream. They drink. You stare at the ceiling and try not to think about it. And if none of that works, if the herbs, the bloodletting, the prayers, the relics, the warm cloths, and whispered psalms all fail, then the priest is called, and you are given last rites. You've seen it done too many times, for children, for mothers, for knights returned from war with fever in their lungs. Sometimes it happens quickly. A girl has a headache. Then she is gone. Other times it lingers. You sit beside a cousin while she slowly forgets how to breathe. Her hands grow cold. Her lips turn blue. You hold her hand, and she smiles at you, but she isn't really there anymore. Later, your governess explains it was God's will. You nod, because what else can you say? Even in health, fear lingers. You are warned not to eat too much fruit in the summer. It will rot your gut. You are told not to sit on cold stone. It will ruin your ability to bear children. You must not go out in the rain. Bad air leads to fevers. You must wear charms around your neck. Silver for purity, amber for warding off sickness, a scrap of your mother's veil for protection. You do all of these things because everyone you know who didn't is no longer here. There is no real privacy in illness. If you are sick, your chamber is filled with watchers, nurses, priests, whispering ladies who debate whether your color looks better or worse today. If you are well, you are expected to visit the sick, not because it brings comfort, but because it is your duty. You kneel beside a pale girl and murmur verses you barely understand. You dab her lips with wine she can't swallow. You smile, even as you feel the heat rising from her skin. You pray, not for her recovery, because that would be too hopeful, but that her death, if it comes, will be quick and quiet and free of scandal, because even in death, a princess must behave. You've heard the horror stories of girls locked in towers when their illness made them unpresentable, of women buried in haste with their faces covered, their names omitted from the family chronicle, of daughters who died of childbirth at 14. You've seen the scars on your nurse's hands, burns from a poultice that went wrong. She never speaks of the girl she lost, but you remember her singing lullabies to a doll when she thought no one was listening. Death is everywhere, and yet no one talks about it plainly. It is always the fever, or the weakness, or the will of God, but you know better. You know how it feels. It feels like waking up to find the castle quieter than it should be. It feels like the absence of footsteps in the corridor outside your room. It feels like the servant who used to bring you herbs no longer arriving at dawn. It feels like wearing black and pretending it makes you safe. It doesn't. Even royalty doesn't escape death. It just wears silk when it comes. And maybe that's the strangest thing of all, that you can be so protected, so guarded, so prepared, and still be completely helpless. No title stops the cough. No crown keeps out the fever. And no prayer, however heartfelt, can guarantee the next morning. So tonight, when you climb into your narrow bed, and your maid tucks the blanket up to your chin, and the fire dies down to glowing embers, you stare at the ceiling and listen to the stillness, to the stone breathing, to the reminder that, in this world, every breath is a gift, and every day without fever is a quiet miracle. You are a princess, but you are also a girl. And in the medieval world, those two facts are always at odds with each other. From the moment you were born, no. Even before your worth was measured not by your laughter or your ideas, but by the shape of your body and the roles it might fulfill someday. Your mother was praised not for raising you well, but for surviving your birth. Your father, if he was disappointed that you weren't a boy, never said so, not directly, but you heard the way they spoke of your brothers, as heirs, as hope, as strength. You were spoken of as potential, and potential is just another word for not yet useful. The women around you, they're the ones who taught you how to exist in this world, how to move, how to speak, how to behave. But they also carried burdens you couldn't yet understand. Your mother, once a princess herself, is now a queen. But being queen means little when your main responsibility is bearing children. Over and over, you've seen her pale and trembling after childbirth, the bed linens dark, the midwives whispering. You've seen her weep after a stillbirth quickly, quietly, before being pulled back into the role of queen and consort and sacred vessel. She rarely speaks of pain. That would be unbecoming. But you've seen it, the tightness around her mouth, the tiredness in her eyes. She loves you in the way women in cages love the small birds they're allowed to keep, not with freedom, but with familiarity. Your aunts, your ladies in waiting, your nursemaid, they fill your days. They teach you how to sew, how to kneel, how to fold your hands like you're made of porcelain. They tell you stories. Some are comforting. Some are warnings dressed as fairy tales. They don't speak openly about the things that matter. Not about the blood, not about the nights, not about what happens after you're married. But you hear them anyway, in the silences, in the glances exchanged when your corset is drawn too tight and you win. In the way they go quiet when someone mentions childbirth. They've all lost something. A sister, a child, a name. You just don't know which. As for the children of the household, your younger siblings, cousins, and noble fosterlings, they exist in a strange limbo. Never quite safe, never fully secure. Infant mortality is high, too high. You've had younger siblings you never met named, baptized, buried in the same week. The castle chapel holds more tiny coffins than anyone talks about. You walked past one this morning, its surface barely long enough to hold a loaf of bread. Children who survive past age 5 are watched more closely, not because they're cherished, but because they are now investments. Your younger brother, for example, he's being groomed for command, already mimicking your father's gestures, already being told he is strong, brave, born to rule. He plays with toy swords and wooden horses, shouting orders at dogs. You played the same games once, but then they told you to stop. Girls must not pretend to fight. Girls must prepare to endure. You sometimes walk past the nursery and hear the wet nurses whispering. Their arms are full, always full. Babies born to women who never hold them, because noble women don't nurse. That's for the hired mothers, peasant women paid in coin and secrecy to keep royal blood alive. And if a child dies, they're dismissed quietly. No ceremony, no thanks, only distance. You're expected to love your future children, but not too much. Too much love is dangerous. It makes you weak. It makes loss unbearable. Better to be polite, to be kind, but never to hope too strongly. The servants who tend to your chamber women who've worked here for decades, they speak in hushed tones about family curses, about bad luck, about spirits in the nursery and dreams of children who never woke. You're told not to listen, but you remember every word. You think often of what your future will look like. You've seen your older sister married off. She was 15. She stood in the great hall, draped in foreign fabrics, her hands trembling as her husband arrived twice her age. A stranger, but rich and pious and politically convenient. She kissed your forehead and promised to write. She never did. You don't know if she can. You don't ask, because asking questions implies doubt, and doubt implies you are not ready. You are expected to marry too, to be traded, like silk, like land, like a seal pressed into wax. You've already heard the whispers, suitors from neighbouring duchies, alliances with distant counts, dowries discussed over wine, while you embroidered birds on cloth and pretended not to hear. No one asks what you want, because what you want doesn't matter. Your family life, then, is one of choreography, of rehearsed affection and polite distance. Your father kisses your hand, not your forehead. Your mother asks how you slept, but not what you dream. Your brothers pat your shoulder, but don't meet your eyes. Everyone loves each other, but only within the boundaries allowed. And when those boundaries are crossed, when grief slips through, or tenderness becomes too real, someone always reminds you of your duty. because even emotions are subject to rank. You share a bedchamber with younger cousins, girls whose names you sometimes forget. They come and go. One day they're here, the next they're sent away to marry or serve in another house. You wake in the night to the sound of someone crying. You never ask why. You just reach out your hand in the dark and hold theirs, softly, because that is all you are allowed to do. And sometimes it's enough. Just enough. In this world, women carry everything. The memory of children not born, the weight of marriages not chosen, the silence of loss not acknowledged. You are taught that your power lies in patience, virtue, fertility, and silence. But deep down, you know something else. You know that the women around you have built an entire world inside this one. A secret world of glances, of gestures, of quiet resistance. They survive not because they are weak, but because they are never allowed to stop surviving. And you, little princess, future wife, potential queen, you are learning their language. One stitch, one step, one silent night at a time. The afternoon hours stretch on like old wool, thick, dull, and full of static. You've already done your embroidery, already read your assigned psalm, already walked the length of the solar twice, once with your tutor explaining Latin verbs, and once with your lady-in-waiting reminding you to keep your eyes lowered when speaking to men of higher rank. Now comes the part of the day you dread most, the watching hours, because this is when things go wrong, not dramatically, not like in the tales of courtly romance or the poems sung by minstrels. No, here, things unravel quietly. A curt nod from your father at dinner, a whispered insult from a visiting noblewoman, masked as a compliment, a sideways glance from your cousin, who once shared your bedchamber and now speaks only when chaperones are present. This is the hour of social conflict, and for a medieval princess, conflict is almost never physical. It's status-based warfare played out in silence, glances, and rumors. Today, a visiting lord's daughter has arrived. You were warned. She's 16, educated, and rumored to have refused 2 marriage offers unheard of. She enters the hall with her chin raised, her gown heavy with embroidery, her sleeves long enough to trail behind her like a silk train of entitlement. She's pretty, and worse, she knows it. At the afternoon gathering, she takes the stool nearest the fire, your stool. No one says anything, but everyone notices. You smile, you nod, and you sit farther away, your knees freezing, your spine stiff with resentment. This is the battle, not swords, but smiles, not arrows, but insinuation. You're expected to remain gracious, even as your position is subtly challenged. Your composure must be unbreakable, because unlike the knights downstairs in the courtyard, you fight your battles in silence, and you must never be caught fighting. In the castle, hierarchy is everything. And while the men clash over land, titles, and inheritance, the women wage quieter wars over seating, over suitors, over favors, over who got the better cut of meat at dinner. One misplaced word from you could become a scandal by supper, because everyone talks. The castle is full of servants, and servants are full of ears. They whisper, they watch, they listen through doors you thought were closed, and anything you say that is not properly measured, properly humble, or properly flattering will be heard, repeated, twisted, and remembered. That's why you speak in layers. A compliment is never just a compliment. A smile is never just a smile. You have to learn the art of courtly camouflage, disguising your fear as sweetness, your jealousy as generosity, your irritation as piety. You must never be openly angry. Anger is masculine. You must never raise your voice. That's for fishwives and rebels. You must never sulk. That would make you seem childish. And you're being prepared to be traded like a rare vase, not pitied like a sad one. Even punishment is quiet. When a noblewoman oversteps her role, she's not beaten or thrown in the stocks. She's excluded. Her name disappears from dinner seating. Her embroidery is removed from the tapestry. Her presence is tolerated, but never acknowledged. And that silence is worse than any slap. It's erasure, a fate you're constantly walking the edge of. And then there's the legal world, which you never touch directly, but which governs everything around you. When two servants fight in the courtyard, a bailiff is summoned. You watch from the window as a boy, no older than your brother, is dragged by the collar for stealing bread. You wonder if he's hungry. You wonder if his mother knew. No one answers those questions. Punishments are swift. A beating, stocks, branding, sometimes. And if the crime is serious enough, like striking a nobleman or speaking against the church, death, always public, always final. Justice here is less about fairness and more about keeping the order. You're not supposed to question it, but you do, quietly, internally, especially when you see the way your mother stiffens every time a message arrives from court. When you see how your father's mood changes after speaking with the bishop, when you hear the guards whispering about unrest in the villages. Not everyone outside the castle walls is content to live like this, but inside these walls, you are not allowed to say such things aloud. Later that afternoon, you're brought to the chamberlain. He's an older man, robed and humorless. You stand in silence as he explains a list of diplomatic visitors who will be arriving in the coming week. A bishop from Normandy, a duke's third son, a widowed countess who may be seeking a new match. You are to be presentable. You are to be kind. You are to be noticeable, but not too noticeable. You ask one question, just one, and he raises an eyebrow. A princess should listen, not inquire. You apologize. You're getting better at that. When you return to the solar, the other girls are quiet. Embroidery again. Always embroidery. Your fingers ache. Your thread keeps tangling. The visiting noblewoman is still seated by the fire. She asks about your music, your Latin, your father's alliances. It's a test. Every word you answer carefully, lightly, as if you're only vaguely aware of the implications. You are, but you're not supposed to show it. This is the afternoon you live through every day, not full of action, but full of underlying tension. You've never drawn a sword, but you've mastered the art of diplomacy in silence. You've never ridden into battle, but you know how to fight a girl who wants your position without ever raising your voice. You've never stood trial, but you know how one phrase, one expression, one letter sent without permission can cost you everything. You live in a world where conflict is constant, but always hidden, where danger is cloaked in civility, where the walls are thick, but gossip travels like smoke through cracks you cannot see. And in this world, your survival depends not on strength, but on endurance through slights, endurance through suspicion, endurance through the endless afternoons where every smile is a weapon and every silence a trap. You have learned to endure, but you're tired, and it's not even night yet. The sky outside has turned the color of bruised parchment pale gray, smeared with streaks of violet and ash. Dusk creeps in slowly at first, then all at once. In the medieval world, night falls like a shutter slamming down. There is no electric glow to hold back the dark, no switches to flick, no gentle lamplight waiting to warm the room. There are only candles, smoky and short-lived, torches sputtering in wall brackets, a few glowing embers in the hearth, if someone remembered to bank the fire. You feel it before you see it. The cold returns. It always does. With night comes silence, but not the peaceful kind. This is the silence of held breath, of shadows stretching long across stone floors, of corridors that feel a little too narrow. The castle shrinks after sunset. Its grandeur becomes menace. Its echo becomes whisper. You are escorted back to your chamber. You don't walk alone, because no one does at night. Not even you. Especially not you. The halls are dangerous after dark. Not just from intruders or ghosts whispered about by the kitchen staff, but from servants who've had too much ale, from guards who believe a princess is only as inviolable as she is protected, from power that wears a human face. Your maid walks 2 steps behind you. She carries a candle cupped in her hand. You carry yourself like a girl who knows her way, even though you've passed this same corridor 1,000 times and still can't shake the feeling that the shadows are watching. Your chamber door creaks as it opens, always. Inside, the rushes have been stirred to release their herbal scent, lavender and mint, but underneath it is the smell of wet stone, old wool, and something faintly metallic. There's a fire in the hearth, but it's small, low, reluctant. The coals are the color of dying stars. You feel no warmth. Your bed is ready, the canopy pulled down, curtains half closed. It waits for you, like a coffin made of linen, but you're not allowed to collapse yet. Not yet. Because bedtime for a princess is another ritual, another performance. Your veil is removed first, then your belt. Your outer gown is unlaced slowly, carefully by your maid. You do not speak. She does not speak. The silence is not uncomfortable, just accepted. You are both performing a role. She helps you step out of the gown, then the kirtle, then the chemise, only if the night is especially cold and there's a fresh one to replace it. Otherwise, you sleep in it. Your underthings are hung by the fire to dry. Your night linen is simple, coarse, long-sleeved, more sack than shift. It scratches your skin, but you're used to that now. Your hair is unbraided, slowly, carefully, 100 pins removed, one by one. Some are still hot from the fire. Others are cold as bone. Then comes the brushing. Your maid uses a carved wooden comb. The strokes are long, deliberate. She murmurs a prayer under her breath as she works, a protective charm meant to keep your dreams clean and your hair from tangling into knots that the devil could live in. Because yes, that's a belief here. The devil hides in knots. You are told not to sleep with uncombed hair, or uncovered mirrors, or uncovered feet. Night is full of rules, and all of them speak to a single truth. Darkness is dangerous. When the brushing is done, you kneel beside your bed. You pray. Not just because you're devout, but because you're afraid not to. You pray for your family, for your health, for your marriage future, or current. You pray against illness, fire, betrayal, sudden death. You pray against dreams that might linger too long, and spirits that might visit if the window is left ajar. Your maid extinguishes the candle. Your chamber darkens instantly. The only light now is from the fire, and even that is dying. You climb into bed. The sheets are cold. The mattress sags in the middle. There are mice in the walls. You know this. You've seen them run along the hearthstones when they thought no one was watching. You've heard them chew through the edges of your stored embroidery. You tuck your feet under the blanket and hope tonight isn't the night one decides to visit you. The castle has gone still, but not yet. Outside, in the courtyard, you hear the guards switching shifts. A dog barks once, then goes silent. A door creaks somewhere. Not yours, you hope. Wind howls through the shutters, rattling them like bones. Somewhere near the chapel, a bell rings, not the time bell. Something softer. A death bell? You pull the covers higher. Fire is your next fear. You've seen it before. A dropped candle. A tapestry too close to the hearth. The entire western wing blackened by smoke before anyone could stop it. You remember the smell: burned cloth, scorched wood, and something else. Something human. You know where the water buckets are. You've memorized the escape routes. But if fire comes, it won't matter. Not in these heavy gowns. Not on these narrow stairs. And if fire doesn't come, there are other things: night visitors, noblemen with power and boredom, drunken cousins, shadowed threats that go unspoken because speaking them makes them real. You've heard stories: girls sent away, silences bought with coin, a pregnancy erased with a hurried marriage, a secret that never left the nunnery walls. You do not leave your room at night, ever. Even if you hear something, even if someone knocks, your maid sleeps in the corner, her back to the wall, her hand on a small wooden cross. For you, for protection. Because in this world, protection is not assumed. It must be prayed for, earned, watched over. And the worst fear? It's the one that arrives with no sound at all: death. It has visited your family more times than you can count. Infants who didn't wake, a cousin who slipped on the stairs and cracked her head like an egg, a lord who drank too much and never rose from the bench. You were 9 when you saw your first corpse. You touched her hand. It was cold, so very cold. Now, in the quiet of your bed, you listen to the rats in the walls, to your own breath, to the creaking timbers and the slow hiss of dying fire. You try to think of pleasant things: summer sunlight, the orchard in bloom, warm honey on bread. But even in your dreams, the castle follows. The rules, the rituals, the long stone hallways that go nowhere. And somewhere in the distance, always, a bell ringing. Not to wake you, but to warn you that tomorrow is coming, and you will have to survive it all over again. The castle is sleeping now. The torches have burned low. The bells are still. No servants move. No pages whisper. Even the mice seem quiet tonight, as if they too are finally resting. You lie still in your cold bed beneath the weight of the woolen blankets and the heavier weight of expectation. You close your eyes not because you are comfortable, but because comfort was never part of this life. You've survived another day, and that alone is enough. Because for a medieval princess, survival was never guaranteed. Not even with guards at the gates and prayers on your lips. Not with fine gowns and educated tutors. Not with fire in the hearth or priests in the chapel. You have walked carefully between duty and danger, obedience and silence. And tonight you rest in a world that asked too much of you too soon. Let's take one last breath together and let go of the world we've wandered through. Let go of the cold stone walls. Let go of the weight of your gown, the tightness of the corset. Let go of the taste of vinegar and old bread. Let go of the whispers, the rules, the eyes that watched you. Let go of the rituals, the silence, the expectation. Let go of the names of men you were expected to marry. Let go of the ache in your knees, the comb in your hair, the fire that never quite warms. Let go of that small, constant voice reminding you to behave, to please, to endure. The day is over now, and for the first time, you are allowed to simply be still. No posture to maintain, no performance to give, just stillness, just quiet, just breath. The world of the medieval princess is harsh, beautiful, at a distance, like stained glass glowing in the light, but cold and jagged up close. Behind every luxury was a hidden price. Behind every silk veil, a carefully measured silence. Behind every public smile, a private burden. It wasn't magic, it was management. A life held together with laces, rituals, and the thin thread of duty. And yet, she endured. She survived long days and longer nights. She watched others disappear, fall sick, fall silent, be sent away, or buried quietly. And still, she woke. Still, she walked the halls. Still, she knelt and stitched and prayed and learned. Still, she bore the weight of titles and expectations and silence. She was not allowed to shout. She was not allowed to run. She was not allowed to want, but she dreamed. She dreamed behind veiled eyes. She dreamed of summer and open fields. She dreamed of breathing without tightening her corset ties. She dreamed of speaking and not being shushed, of asking and not being scolded, of laughing and not being watched. And sometimes, in the darkest hours of the night, with the fire dying and the stars high above the narrow windows, she let herself pretend that the castle around her was gone, that the walls were soft, that the air was warm, that there were no bells, no schedules, no shooters, no punishments, only quiet, only rest, only peace. And maybe, in her dreams, she was not a princess. Maybe she was just a girl lying in a bed, listening to the wind hum through the trees, letting her thoughts drift like leaves down a slow river. You're allowed to do the same now. Let your own thoughts drift. You don't need to hold them tightly. You don't need to finish anything. You don't need to be anything. You are not being watched. You are not being judged. You are not expected to sit straight or answer in Latin or bow at the right moment. You're just here, in the quiet, warm, safe, and modern. There's no corset, no fire that needs tending, no chambermaid tucking in the corners of your bed, no prayers to memorize, no flickering torchlight, no shadows in the corridor. There is no suitor on his way. There is no letter about your betrothal. There is no bleeding scheduled at dawn. You are here, now, and the past is gone. It lived in its own time, but you don't have to. You don't have to wake up in that stone chamber. You don't have to kneel on those frozen flagstones. You don't have to learn silence or stillness to survive. You've come back. You've wandered far tonight, through castles and courts and cold mornings and long prayers. But now it's time to rest. Let the stone walls fall away. Let the fire die out. Let the heavy gowns drop to the floor. Let the crown slip from your head. You are not a princess. Not tonight. Tonight, you are just someone falling asleep to the gentle hum of a fan, the soft warmth of blankets, the quiet murmur of boring history. And that is enough. You've listened, you've learned, and now you can let it all go. The story ends here. So tonight, as you drift off, remember you don't have to wake up in the Middle Ages. Sleep well.